Hello. Today I have some scary stories from our paranormal. I hope you enjoy haunted houses. Till next time.
We lost our first home during the housing collapse. It was heartbreaking. Both my husband and I grew up in rentals. Home ownership was a big deal for us, both losing it because my biggest shame. It took several years to right the ship, and I am proud to say, we bounced back better than ever. After a long search, we found our dream. A beautiful affordable cabin in the woods. The previous owner of my house died in a motorcycle crash. The house had been on the market for years prior to our closing. I dreamed that the previous owner left me a fruit basket and a handwritten card which read, "Take care of it for me." When we moved in, I found vintage mason jars with fruit baskets etched in them. That first year it seemed whenever we needed something like a simple tool or screw to fix something in the house, it would just turn up in the shed or in a cabinet. He built the house with his own two hands. He converted it from an old hunting cabin into a 4-bedroom house. It was a labor of love for him. Here is the crazy thing, we decided to research his accident. He died 3 years before we moved in, on the exact day that we lost our first house.
I rented and later bought a house in Denver, Colorado, and there were 2 stairways into the basement. The door to the front stairway was always closed and we never used it. Steep stairs, always super cold, not terribly convenient. That door would swing open every day or so while I was sitting on the couch and then close. I would get up to go check it and it would be latched shut. As I was preparing to buy the house from the landlord, I got a note from an attorney that they and the police wanted to come over and do some crime scene shit, which was really super interesting, and that's how I found out that the previous tenant, Jane, had shot herself in the chest while cleaning a shotgun. While her husband was in the basement. And he didn't hear it. And he was acquitted. But I wasn't on the jury, so I digress. So, now that I had a name for her, whenever the door would open, I would ask Jane to bring me back some cigarettes. She never did. After I bought the house, I had it smudged and cleansed by a psychic who told her it was okay to go. And the door never opened on its own again.
My parents manage a pub in London. Due to this, we lived in a flat directly above said pub, and we always used to think there was a ghost of some sort living there. Normally this was because of our lights attached to the ceiling above the bar swinging, which could have just been a draft from somewhere, to hearing creaking noises, again, old building, could have been a draft. However, there was one night almost a year ago when I was staying at home for a short while when something super spooky happened. It was about 1 a.m. and all the alarms had been put on and the lights were turned off, etc. The way the alarm system works is that if there's large amounts of movement detected, it goes off. So I'm still awake while the rest of my family have gone to bed for the night, when the alarm goes off. I've only ever heard it go off once before, and that was scary by itself. I'm thinking, shit time to get a bat or massive flashlight or something. My mum and dad come barging out of their bedrooms and we unlock the door separating our flat from the pub. Turn on the lights and grab something big each just in case someone broke in. We walk about the bar area for a little while. Going complete special forces, checking corners, banging doors open with our feet, then we notice something super weird. Some of the electronics and fuses etc. for the pub are hidden behind a small wooden door/panel near the men's toilets. It's usually on a latch of some sort so it doesn't randomly come loose and smack a customer in the face. This panel was wide open. We're super weirded out because this has never happened before. There's no way a rat or something like that could have done it because the latch and panel itself are way too heavy to be moved by something that small, which also means it couldn't have been a draft. I suggest we check the CCTV the next day, lo and behold, it wildly swings open for no apparent reason. I have proof of this somewhere, just because it was so spooky. We all agreed it was a ghost. TLDR, parents manage a pub, alarm goes off one night because a secret wooden panel for the electronics and such wildly swings open for no reason, even though it is on a latch.
Several people, myself included, have seen or felt a presence which we have affectionately called the man in white. In order, here are the stories. My brother was cooking with his girlfriend in the kitchen, and from the periphery he saw a white figure pass in front of the kitchen door, as walking through the hallway. I was in my room. He asked me if I had passed through there. I hadn't. A maid was cleaning the bathroom and she felt in a really intense manner that something was looking at her from the bathroom's door. She told my mom about it, really affected by it. A different maid was walking through the hallway that connects the bedroom, on her way to clean the bathroom that's on the way to my room. When she got to the bathroom, the door was open and saw a figure standing in front of the toilet. She assumed it was me peeing with the door open and quickly turned away, and continued on to the bedrooms to tidy them up. I was in my room, so when she got to it and saw me, she turned around to the bathroom to check if there was someone. She screamed and sat at my bed, pale and with goosebumps, when she notices it wasn't there anymore. While I was in that same bathroom brushing my teeth, I saw a shadow pass through the hallway. Granted, I don't give my story much importance because it might have been nothing, and just my brain forming patterns. My mother's sneakers fell to the floor from on top of the washing machine. It wasn't turned on. My mother even brought an uncle of hers who is a priest to cleanse the house. That was before the second maid and I saw him. I know these stories are pretty mild, but the man in white is pretty chill. He's become a recurrent joke at our house. The dogs are looking fixedly at the hall. The man in white, I lose my socks. The man in white. Someone feels a presence somehow. Chill man in white.
This story came from my parents before I was born. Based on my own experiences in the house, but nothing to this level, I'd say it's accurate. In the mid-1970s, my parents bought a 100-year-old Victorian house in NJ. The original owner, Hiram, was a captain in the Union Army and an engineer. After the Civil War, he developed parts of my hometown under the assumption the railroad would come through and he would hit it rich. He didn't. The railroad went one town over. That didn't deter him from developing a public park and building several houses, including mine and one for his daughter and son-in-law just 100 yards away. At the time my parents bought the house, the only living descendant was Hiram's granddaughter, Irma, who by then was in her 80s and living in the house Hiram built for her parents/his daughter. Irma was born in Hiram's house, but raised in the second house by her parents. Irma took a liking to my parents because of their interest in the history of the houses. Irma died not long after my parents moved in. My parents bought several pieces of furniture at Irma's estate sale, including a full antique dining set which, I believe, originally belonged to Hiram. They set up the furniture in the dining room, which could be accessed by two doors, one of which was partially off the hinges and, thus, needed to be picked up for anyone to open and go through. Doing so made a distinct and loud creaking sound, followed by a slam to shut the door and get it to latch. I can attest to this, as my parents never fixed the door during my time in the house. Both doors could be locked by skeleton key. As a precaution, they usually locked the broken door. Around the time my parents bought the furniture, they attended Irma's wake, during which my mom placed a skeleton key from our/Hiram's house into Irma's casket. The night after the wake, my parents were lying awake in bed when they heard the broken dining room door open, creak, and slam. They went downstairs to inspect, but no one was there. Looks like Irma, and perhaps Hiram, got one last look at everything before moving on. TLDR, friendly ghost came back to inspect her dining room set and made a good bit of noise doing so.
The house my parents currently live in and the house we lived in before they moved. The spirit, in the house we all lived in never felt malevolent. More mischievous. It would do silly things like move stuff, turn on lights, turn off the microwave. We did see something once in the hallway. My mom and I had seen my dad go that direction, so naturally we assumed the shadowy movement we saw was him. When my mom called over to remind him to shut the light back off, he called from a bedroom away from the hallway that the light wasn't on. Another time, right after my son was born, I heard it. He was about 2 months old and very colicky, and my mom would hear us sometimes and get up to check on me. I fell asleep, kinda, after he finally fell asleep one night with him on my chest in the recliner and heard someone walk across the carpet towards us. I asked who I thought was my mom if we woke her up and half opened my eyes to nothing in front of me.
Both things were kinda creepy, and I was definitely a little grimacing face afterwards, but I never felt scared there. Their new house is kinda the same, but you can tell it's not the same spirit. How to explain it? We have seen them multiple times, full-figured, and very clearly. There's a younger woman in 1900s clothing with lighter colored hair and a kind face. The other spirit is a boy about 8, also in 1900s clothing with darker hair and a saddened face. Neither of them have ever spoken, but usually you can hear them walking around faintly. The first time it was me. My mom and dad were both out and all 3 of the grandsons were playing outside. I went to come out of the bathroom and saw a boy in the hallway out of the corner of my eye. I went to turn and yell at him to go back outside, but he was gone. I ran up to the front of the house and called out to the kids who were all 3 clear across the yard and couldn't have possibly been inside. The second and third times were both my dad. His first encounter was about 2 days after mine. I hadn't said anything to anyone, so he couldn't have possibly described the same boy unless he'd seen him. He was waking up and rolled over to the woman and the boy standing next to his bed. When he went to wipe his eyes, they disappeared. He thought it was my son and I, but we weren't in the house. The second time it was only the woman and she was walking across the house. They don't do much either outside of closed/open doors and steal my mom's left shoes. We did investigate but couldn't find anything about the property, and the house was built in the 70s, so the clothing doesn't fit the house.
I lived in an older home for about 5 or so years. My stepdad, who knew the man who had lived there before us, told me he hung himself in the attic. I honestly didn't think much of it, that is until I heard the footsteps. Like clockwork, every night at 3 a.m. I would hear footsteps walking along the length of the attic, which would go over my room. The steps were heavy and you could clearly tell the pace was at a normal walking speed. It sounded like a man contemplating something, thinking about his next move. If it was really the former owner, were those his final moments being played out every night before his fateful decision? Who can say? There were other stories, but those footsteps, which went on for years, still freak me out.
My parents are divorced and my mom always used to talk about my dad's house. We had the back room. This is middle America, super small town, 200 people, and kinda crappy houses, but my dad's house was a super old house with an addition. The new addition was the back room. My dad always kept it sealed off. It was full of boxes and it had a bedroom attached. The back room was awesome as a kid because there was so much stuff back there. Boxes full of old toys, papers, weird crap, fishing lures, books, etc. All stuff that had been stored. My mom would always tell us that she put her guitar back there, and would always hear it being strummed at random times, day or night. It just sounded like someone was running their hand across all strings. We always had really minor weird shit at that house, but nothing that would make me say there was an issue 100%. Footsteps, the occasional bang, stuff being moved, could have been anything. I'm closer to 11 or 12 now, and I decide that since nobody is using the back room, it should be mine, the bedroom, gigantic living room, and all. Oddly enough, my dad agreed, but it was later at night, so I move a mattress in on the floor, determined I would set up the room as my own the next day. I went to bed that night on my mattress on the floor, and woke up super late in the night. It sounded like 1,000 birds in the room, all flying around and smacking into walls. Or like 1,000 hands all over the walls, smacking the walls. Including a foot or so above my head. It went on for at least 30 minutes once I put the blankets over my head. Finally I mumbled, "Let me sleep tonight, and I'll never sleep here again," and it stopped. I didn't say crap the next day. I was terrified, but I was also scared of being laughed at. The day passed and at night I was freaked out but still scared to say anything to anyone, so I started to go back to bed, and my dad opened the door and said, "If there's something back here bothering you, you don't have to sleep back here." I immediately got up and slept in another room. Pic of the house from 2013 via Google Maps. It's now burned to the ground.
Less of a haunted house and more of a haunted college dorm. When I moved to college my freshman year, I was assigned to one of the oldest dorms on campus. They are these massive towers that hold a lot of students, and I got assigned to the 8th floor, all the way at the top. I had 4 roommates, and since the dorm was so old, it was relatively small. We had 1 bedroom for all of us, 1 living room, and 1 bathroom. When I moved in, I remember thinking something is a little off about this room, but I'm a skeptic that really believes there's a rational explanation for everything, but that dorm had some really scary shit going on. It was around spring semester when things started to get really out of hand. I had a moving trunk with a padlock on it that we used for a living room table. It was mostly used to hide our booze, but it served its purpose as a table well enough. Well, one night I woke up to this scraping sound in our living area. I went to go check it out cause I had to use the bathroom anyway, and the padlock was swinging back and forth on the truck, making the scraping noise. I thought it might have been one of my roommates, but they were all fast asleep in the room I had just left. I chalked it up to my imagination after I left the bathroom. Then, a couple weeks go by and the door starts to lock itself behind us. The doors didn't have that mechanism automatically, like some doors do, and our RAs always stressed that we should lock the door behind us when we leave. There were days where I would be talking to our friends across the hall and turn around to go back into our dorm and the door would be locked. Not like a bolted lock, but like somebody was holding the handle. My roommates weren't there, or they were with me on the other side of the door. Then the weirdest shit of all started happening. We had a window on the other side of the room from our front door, and it was the middle of winter, so we kept that bad boy shut tight and locked, not that it could open very much anyway. 8th floor, stressed students, you know the rest, and we kept the curtain shut. Well, it's just me and my roommate talking by the front door, getting ready to go eat in the cafeteria when the curtain opens up by itself, hangs there for a second and gets violently torn off the bar it was on. It was like somebody forcefully ripped it off and neither of us were near it. We both looked at each other and left in a hurry because we couldn't explain it whatsoever. It is the one thing I could not rationally explain. I thought maybe a rat or mouse, but there was nothing pointing to that anywhere else in our room. Plus it was way too violently ripped off the bar to be a rat. I still text my roommate about it every now and then and it makes us uncomfortable to talk or think about it. The scraping padlock, which happened all throughout the semester, somebody holding the handle of our front door, and the curtain all convinced me that something was up in that dorm. I've had weird stuff happen to me, but I've always attributed it to one thing or another. These were all really freaky experiences that I still think about a lot. I've got a lot of other stories from when I was a security guard watching over a haunted Victorian-style house, but the dorm takes the cake. It's not such a large experience that affected me deeply, but it was just unsettling to feel like something was going on that we weren't completely aware of.
I've posted one story about the haunted loft apartment I had before. Lots of strange things happened there, but only the first encounter was scary. The place had a weird wall furnace in it, and when winter came on, my new BF, who is now my old husband, lit up the furnace for me. Just as he did, everything went crazy. We heard, but didn't see, doors slamming and footsteps running up and down the stairs. The lamp hanging above the table began to swing wildly. I was standing there in shock while all this was happening. My boyfriend then turned the furnace off and took the front off of it. It was filled with a mouse nest that was just starting to smolder. How he knew what to do is beyond me, and when I asked him, he said he didn't know why he did that. That ghost saved us that night.
We used to live in a house that was built in 1956. There were several things that happened. When my middle daughter was in preschool and kindergarten, she would be trying to go to sleep and would be crying that someone touched her hair, touched her feet, and even said her name in her ear. Finally, when all 3 of my girls were in school, I went into her bedroom and said, "Whoever is touching her and saying her name, please stop. I know you only want to get her attention, but you are scaring her." After that, it never happened again. Around the same time, we removed the carpet in our living room and hallway and put down a wood floor. My husband went to work nights and I would always hear a child running in the hallway. I would get up and check my 3 girls and they would be fast asleep. It happened so often that I stopped checking on the kids. Once my husband was off and even he heard it. He was sleeping, woke up and said one of the girls was up. I said no they weren't and he said they are. I heard them running in the hallway. I had previously not even mentioned it to him because he is a huge skeptic and, TBH, I didn't want to deal with his attitude about it.
This will probably get buried, but my first house growing up always gave me the creeps. I was super young, but I remember it super well. I hated nap time and being in my room because it gave me the creeps. I felt fine everywhere else in the house, but didn't even like playing by myself in my room, and would often hear breathing in my ears similar to when you can hear blood pumping in your ears. I somehow convinced my parents to let me sleep with an inflatable alligator pool floaty, because I thought it would protect me from the ghosts. We didn't even have a pool and lived in the Midwest, so how I made that happen. One night I was waiting to go to sleep with my gator/suffocation hazard that somehow was okay in the very early 90s, and in the dark I see a figure of a man form in the middle on my bedroom. He looked like my grandpa, who was alive at the time, had clothes which looks like they were maybe from the 30s/40s, and was just silently raking my bedroom carpet with one of those longish metal rakes. He did that for a few minutes, then vanished. I wasn't scared when I saw him, and in retrospect it's kind of funny, because WTF. After that I wasn't scared of my house anymore, and never saw him again. I don't believe in the paranormal. I love reading threads like this though so much, but I know what I experienced was real, despite being super young, so who knows. Maybe it was some childhood hallucination or something, but if you feel that distinct feeling of uneasiness somewhere, you know what I'm talking about. There completely could be a logical explanation, but it's still one of my most vivid childhood memories.
I lived in a basement of a duplex that I believe was haunted. I had a few experiences there involving seeing a shadow figure. One night my wife woke me up and said, "Someone's in the house." Okay, my heart is pounding already. I get out of bed and look down the hallway and see a figure standing there at the end of the hallway in the kitchen, then the figure turns and walks out of view. I walk a few steps into the hall to turn the light on and start yelling at this person I think is intruding into my place. I get into the kitchen and nobody is there. I didn't hear any noises or see any sign of anyone being in the apartment. They would have had to cross my field of view to leave the apartment. I got back in bed and asked my wife how she knew someone was in the house. She said she woke up and looked down the hallway and saw someone standing there. My wife had to work graveyard shifts for a month right after this, and it was so hard to sleep by myself after that. I thought about it every single night I was trying to fall asleep.